Good morning, guys. Today is Thursday, December 8th, and we are on day 21 of Module 2, and we're doing our new book today, John Henry. And I want to let you guys know that I might be pausing and doing a lot of stuff in between the lesson today because I have two friends here with me that are watching and they may have questions. So if I suddenly pause the video, it's okay. Just keep watching. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share our screen and we're going to get started with Miss Sabella's video.
Welcome back, legendary thinkers. I'm Sue Sabella, your Great Minds teacher. Let's see what we need for today. Today we'll need John Henry, an American legend, your journal, and a pencil.
Okay, so remember that you just need your journal and a pencil, and I have our copy of John Henry up on the screen for you to look at.
Please pause here to gather what you need and just hit play when you're ready to continue. Today, we're going to dive into John Henry, an American legend. We're going to learn more about the character of John Henry by studying the big events in this legend. The big events are part of the story elements that we often think about when we're using story stones. Today, we'll continue to look at the setting and the characters, but instead of looking at the problem and resolution, we're going to look at three big events in this legend that can help us think more deeply about this story of John Henry. Read this question to yourself, and then we'll read it together.
What is happening in this text?
What is happening in this text? Two of these icons or pictures probably look very familiar to you. The house represents setting, and the faces represent characters. The other icon that looks like a flag with the letter E inside stands for event. And today we'll be looking for at least three big events in John Henry, an American legend. Pause here to set up two columns in your journal. On the left side, you'll have the word words, and on the right side, you'll have the word illustrations. Just hit play when you're ready to dive into the story.
Okay, so in your knowledge journal today on page 87, we're going to set up our chart like Miss Sabella had said. We're going to put words on one side and illustrations on the next. Make sure you put today's date on the top, 12-17. And we're going to go ahead and do the whole chart. That way you have it ready for you when we get started. So you're going to have words and illustrations, and then you need to draw a little house to represent the setting. And I want you to write the words when and where, because we're going to come up with when and where for the setting. And you can draw a little stick person to represent the characters. And then we're going to have three events. So you're going to put an E on each of those sections. And I want you to write first, then, and finally on the side. Okay, so go ahead and pause your video so you can get all of this copied down on page 87. And then when you are ready, you can hit play. So we're going to get back to the video.
As I read pages 3 through 5, I want you to think about these two story elements: setting, when the story took place and where, and also character. And since we're analyzing or studying a legend, let's focus on the main character of the story. Ready? Here we go. Remember, as I read, really focus in on listening for the setting, where it's happening, and when it's happening. Also, which main character are we introduced to? A hush settled over the hills. The sky swirled soundlessly round the moon. The river stopped murmuring. The wind stopped whispering. And the frogs and the owls and the crickets fell silent, all watching and waiting and listening. Then the river roared. The wind whispered and whistled and sang. The frogs croaked. The owls hooted. And all the crickets chirped. Welcome, welcome, echoed through the hills. Where is this legend happening? Let's keep reading. And John Henry was born with a hammer in his hand. That tells me when this story began. Bang, 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 rang little John Henry's hammer through the cabin as he crawled about. What's that rascal up to now? His mother chuckled, and before she knew it, he was big enough to help her around the house. You'll be pausing here to jot down when and where the story took place, and you'll draw a picture of what you learned about the setting. Also, you'll jot down the name of the main character and also draw a picture of what the main character looks like right now. Just hit play when you're ready to move on to the 3 main events.
Okay, so on page 87, at the very top, we have written the setting for when and where. So when did the story happen? On that second page, it gave us very specific details about when the story happened. And John Henry was born with a hammer in his hand. So our story is actually starting when John Henry was born. So on the when part, we're going to write at the time of John Henry's birth. So I'm going to show you my camera. Okay, so we're going to write at the time of John Henry's birth. And then over here, you can draw your illustration. Keep in mind, I'm not an artist. Here's his little feet. Hands. He's holding his big old hammer. Oh, that's bad. Okay, so now where did the story start? Where are we in the story? When it first starts, we are outside of his house, aren't they? All of these things are happening outside the house. So the setting in the first 2 pages are just outside of John Henry's home. And then you can draw a little picture of his house. And he's on a hill. Okay. All right. So now let's think about who is the main character of our story. The title might help. Who's the main character, guys? It is definitely going to be John Henry. All right, and here's my John Henry. He's a big boy. I'm going to draw him holding his hammer. All righty. So there we have the setting that it happened at the time of John's birth and outside of his house. And our main character so far is John Henry. All right, so let's switch back. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to listen to several pages and we're going to listen for the main events in the story.
We now know that John Henry is the main character. So since we know that John Henry is the main character, let's focus in on him and what he's doing on pages 8 and 9. Let's focus on the event. What's happening to John Henry? What is he involved in? Listen carefully, and then we're going to do some jotting again in our journal. Here we go. One stormy night, the ship plowed through the darkness. Suddenly, the big steel rod that turned the paddle wheel broke. The wheel stopped turning. Smash went the rod through the bottom of the ship. "Pump water," shouted the captain. "Get to the port before we sink." John Henry leaped to the paddle wheel crank. He seized it, pushed and grunted and pulled. Slowly, the giant wheel turned. With all of his strength, he kept it turning. "Lord Almighty, help us," someone whispered in that long, dark night. As day broke, they sighted shore and pulled into port. A thunderous cheer went up for John Henry. I want you to pause here to do some thinking or to chat with a learning partner. What's the big event here? What did John Henry do? Pause to think or chat and just hit play when you're ready to do some jotting in your journal.
Okay, so let's think about this page. What is going on this page that is a big event in John Henry's life? So I know that this is his first job, that he got his first job on the paddle boats, the paddle wheel riverboats. So I think that we should probably put something about that on our chart. Okay, so for the first event, we need to put, the marker's already open, I just wrote on myself, that he gets his first job on riverboat. And remember, with bullet points, you don't have to write a complete sentence. You just write out your thoughts. Okay, so let's look at that page again. What else is going on? What else is going on in that story? It looks like something has happened. Like the paddle, it says the paddle wheel broke and there's all this water coming in. And what did John Henry do? Yeah, he ended up saving the people on the boat. He saved their lives because he got there and he grabbed onto the crank and he pushed it. And so he made the wheel start turning again, which pumped all the water out. So we need to add that to our chart for the first event. So we need to put the paddle wheel broke. And John saved them. All right, and then if you want to do your illustration, I'm gonna try to make a paddle wheel. There's my boat. All right, so there's my boat. And I'm gonna put John Henry. He's jumping down to the paddle wheel. He's gonna jump down and save them. Art was not my major. Okay, so let's go back and we're gonna listen to some more of the story to see what the next main event is.
Now it's time to record this event in your journal. If you're like me, pictures actually help me come up with the words that I'd like to write down. So I encourage you, draw a picture first of what John Henry did on pages 8 and 9. What was the big event? Draw the picture first, and then that picture will help you come up with the words that you'll jot down in that column. Pause here to do that work and just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so we already filled in our first part together and we drew our picture. And you can draw the picture first if you want to, or you can do it second. It's totally up to you. We're going to continue on and see what happens next.
As I read pages 14 through 17, I encourage you to draw a picture of the next event in the illustrations column. Ready? Here we go. Deep into the mountain they worked, as John Henry's singing echoed through the tunnel. The powder men got ready to blast more rock. They filled a hole with dynamite, put in a long fuse, and lit it. "Run, men!" cried the foreman. They all scrambled back, ready to dash clear of the blast. At that instant came a great cracking and rumbling, and the entire tunnel trembled around them. "It's a cave-in! We're trapped!" There was no place to run. The fuse burned closer to the dynamite. John Henry was nearest the fuse. He ran to put it out, but tripped and fell. Oh, get your pencil ready. You're really working on that illustration of this event. "Oh, I'm hurt bad," he groaned. "I can't get up." The fuse burned farther out of reach. Others rushed toward it, but they were too far away. Suddenly, John Henry remembered. He still had his hammer in his hand. Down came the hammer, smack, on the burning tip. I can picture what you're drawing in your journal. The fuse was out. Danger past. Sighs of relief filled the smoky tunnel. "Phew! Help me up, boys," mumbled John Henry. Clearing their way through the cave-in, the men carried him to safety. Pause here to finish up your illustration and also to use that illustration to help you think about the main event so you can jot down the words that go along with the main event. Just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so when I was listening to those pages being read, the thing that stood out to me, the main event, was that the dynamite was lit, and then John Henry was the one who stopped it when he hit the dynamite with his hammer. So I drew a picture. There's my dynamite, and there's John Henry holding his hammer, and he's about to put it out. So let's talk about the events that were on that page. So we need to make sure that we say that he works on the railroad now, because the last thing we knew, he was working on the paddle boat. So we need to make sure that we say that he's working on a railroad. Okay, and then what is the event that happened that I drew about, or that was so important on those 2 pages? Yep, there was a cave-in in the tunnel. And there was a dynamite stick lit. So then what happens? What did John Henry do to fix this problem on those few pages? That's right. He smacked it with his hammer and he burned out the fuse. So John hit fuse with his hammer. And when he did that, what did he end up doing for all those men stuck in the cave? What did he do? He saved their lives again. He saved more people's lives. Okay, so for the second part of our chart, we said that he is working on a railroad now, that there was a cave-in at the tunnel and the dynamite was lit, but John hit the fuse with his hammer and saved their lives. He sounds like a very heroic person. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the story and we're going to listen to another event that happened in John Henry's life. Make sure you keep your ears open so you can hear what's happening, okay?
Now it's time to draw an illustration for the last main event in this story. Ready? Here we go. Some days later, they heard an unfamiliar clatter. Down the tunnel came a group of men with a strange machine. This is a steam drill. It can drill more holes faster than any 6 men combined, a new man bragged. Who can beat that? I think we know who. John Henry stepped forward. Try me. He and little Bill took their workplaces. John Henry gripped his hammer. Little Bill clutched his steel drill. Check the machine, came an order. A nervous hand fell on the switch, and in the dark, both sides waited for the signal to start. A hoarse voice counted, 1, 2, 3. The machine shrieked as it started. John Henry swung his hammer, and a crash of steel on steel split the air. Clang, bang, clang. The drill got red hot in little Bill's hands. He quickly dropped it and picked up another. Hiss, whistle, rattle. Men frantically heaved coal into the hungry, roaring engine and poured water into the steaming boiler. Whoop, clang, whoop, blang. John Henry's hammer whistled as he swung it. Chug, chug, clatter rattled the machine. Hour after hour raced by. The machine was ahead. Hand me that 20-pound hammer, little Bill. Harder and faster crashed the hammer. Great chunks of rock fell as John Henry ripped hole after hole into the tunnel wall. The machine rattled and whistled and drilled even faster. Friends doused John Henry and little Bill with cold water to keep them going. Then John Henry took a deep breath, picked up 2 sledgehammers, and sang, Ain't no hammers struck such fire, strike light lightning, Lord, and I won't tire. Hammers like this, Law, there's never been. I'll keep swinging 'em, Lord, until we win. John Henry swung both mighty hammers, faster and faster. He moved so fast, the men could only see a blur, and sparks from his striking hammers. His strokes rang out like great heartbeats. At the other side of the tunnel, the machine shrieked, groaned, and rattled and drilled. Then all at once it shook and shuddered, wheezed, and stopped. Frantically, men worked to get it going again, but they couldn't. It had collapsed. John Henry's hammering still rang and echoed through the tunnel with a strong and steady beat. Suddenly, there was a great crash. Light streamed into the dark tunnel. John Henry had broken through. Wild cries of joy burst from the men. Still holding one of his hammers, John Henry stepped out into the glowing light of a dying day. It was the last step he ever took. Even the great heart of John Henry could not bear the strain of his last task. John Henry died with a hammer in his hand. If you listen to the locomotives roaring through the tunnels and across the land, you'll hear them singing of that great steel-driving man, John Henry. Listen. What happens during John's competition against the machine? Add to your illustration, and then also use that illustration to help you generate words that describe this main event. Pause here to complete your chart and just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so my illustration for the last event of John Henry's life was when he walked out of the cave and he was holding his hammer. So I drew it like he's inside the cave and that's like the mountain around him and there's the ground. So I drew him coming out of the cave. So that is actually a pretty big event, don't you think? So we need to say that in the last event, he thought that he could beat the steam engine. Isn't that the whole point of the last event of his life, that he thought he could beat it, so he worked really hard? So we need to put that on there, that he thinks he thought he could beat the steam engine. And so because he thought he could beat that steam engine, what did he do? Did he like just work normal, or did he work super hard, even twice as hard than normal? Instead of just using one hammer, what did he get? He used two hammers. And he was faster than that steam drill was. And then the very sad end of the book, what happened after John Henry beat that steam engine? Yeah, he worked so hard that his heart just stopped and he died. Okay. So you guys need to make sure that as we are doing these together throughout the video, that you are also writing this down on your page 87. So if you need to pause the video now to make sure that you have everything written down on page 87, please do that. And then push play when you're ready. I'll leave it like this for a few seconds and then I'll move it back down. Okay, so now we're going to do the events in order using our sequence words, our first, then, and finally. Okay, so we're going to go back to the video to listen to Miss Sabella before we do that.
Now that you have the 3 main events in your journal, it's a great time to describe them to your learning partner or Jackson. I've added the words first, then, and finally to guide your recounting. When someone does a recounting, they tell the main events that happened. So go ahead and practice out loud. Pause to do that and hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so you can do this with your learning partner, or you can do it with Jackson if you want to, or you can pause the screen and tell me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to model it for you first, because like I said, I have friends in here, so I'm going to tell it to them, okay? So you're going to use those sequence words, first, then, and finally, that we put on the side of your journal, okay? So Miss Dayton, Miss Coker, did you know that first in the book about John got a job on a riverboat and the paddle wheel broke and John had to jump on the paddle and save them. Then he was working on a railroad and there was a cave-in in the tunnel and there was a stick of dynamite that was lit. But John hit the dynamite fuse with his hammer and he saved their lives. And finally, in the end, John thought that he could beat the steam drill engine. And so he ended up using 2 hammers and he was still drilling faster than that steam drill, but he worked so hard that his heart stopped and John died. Very sad. So you are going to use your information on your chart to tell your learning partner or Jen, or you can tell your own dog or me. Tell us how the story happened, okay? Tell me the events of the story and make sure you're using those sequence words first, then, and finally. So go ahead and pause the video and do that. And then when you are finished, go ahead and push play so that we can go to the next step. Go.
What was the best feature in this author's work? And also, what was the best feature in this illustrator's work? I'd like you to take time to look through your copy of John Henry, An American Legend, or to scroll back to what we just read, what I read out loud. Think about what the best feature of this book is. And if you have a learning partner close by, share your thinking with your learning partner. If the word feature is a new word for you, I'd like you to think about it this way. When we think about the word feature, we're really asking, what makes this book so special, so different from other books? What did Keats do or use in this book to make it unique or special? For example, a unique feature that the author of this book used was the use of sounds as individual words, like clang and bang and rattle. We don't see that in every book. That feature or that ingredient that the author used really makes this book different from other books.
So do you guys remember when we were learning in phonics about words that had sound? We learned about words that had sounds like zip and bang and things like that. Do you guys remember what those were called? They were called onomatopoeias. Those are words that are sounds that you actually can hear when you are reading them. So just throw that in there, extra little tidbit of information. So let's get back to our video.
Pause here to think about what Keats used in this book as an author and as an illustrator to truly make this book unique or different from other books. Just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, you have the option of opening up your copy of John Henry that is on the Google Classroom to look at so that you can do it at your own pace, or you can just pause the video and then scroll back and look at the illustrations that I had posted beside the video. So that is up to you, whichever one you want to do, but I would like for you to go ahead and do that now and then pause the video. And then when you are ready and you have figured out what it is that you think that he did that was the best feature as the writer and as the illustrator, go ahead and hit play so we can continue our lesson. Okay, so the thing that I think that he did that was really, really cool as the writer was he used a lot of really vibrant words. He used a lot of like the part where the day he was born. He used a lot of really cool language there. Like he said, the river stopped murmuring. And so in my brain, I can hear a river making that little murmuring sound as it's running down the hill. And the wind stopped whispering. And I can hear that in my brain. I can visualize it and I can hear it actually happening. And he talks about how the frogs and the owls and the crickets are silent. And I know from experience of walking through the woods how that sounds when all of a sudden all the animals just go quiet. So his language, the use of his language, made me be able to visualize a lot in just the first page. And then he did it all throughout the text. And his illustrations were really good about how they show motion. And an example is on page 20. So on his illustration, you can see how he is swinging that hammer. Like he starts, way back here, and he's like, you can tell by the way that the illustration was created. So his use of illustrations were able to show motion. And I think those are probably the two best features for me from this text. So I would love to hear what you have to say. So if you would like to go ahead and pause and tell me what you think, or tell your learning partner what you think, or if you want to make a short video and attach it to the video assignment so that I can hear what you think is the best feature, that would be great. And I would love to see you. All right, so we're going to get back to our video because we are almost finished.
When you were in first grade and kindergarten and you worked on retelling a story, you gave lots and lots of details. As you get older, especially as a second grader, your focus now will be more on the big events in a story. That's called a recounting. You worked very hard today to figure out the main events in John Henry, An American Legend. You also practiced describing those events out loud. You worked on recounting, and you did an amazing job. Keep working hard, keep sharing your learning with others, and I will see you again very soon.
Okay, so that is the end of our lesson, and this is actually the last lesson that we will have until we come back in January. So I hope everybody has a fabulous winter vacation. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a great Christmas. If you celebrate Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. If you don't celebrate anything, just enjoy your time off and relax and get lots of rest, okay? And I look forward to seeing you again in January. We will pick up with John Henry when we come back. And you guys have a great time off, okay? Make sure you get all your work done though. I'll talk to you later. Bye.